Welcome, Diva family, to episode 18, where we explore the concept of a psychedelic container, why it's important to consider, as well as what makes a good and a not so good container. Let's start by defining our terms. What exactly is a psychedelic container, and why does it matter? A psychedelic container is the intentional structure, all the aspects you can see, sense, and feel that hold and support a psychedelic journey. A good container takes into consideration all the parts, such as safety, care, intention, sacredness, expertise, along with good energetics. A strong container doesn't necessarily control the journey. It simply provides a secure environment for it to unfold. On the other hand, a container that's not safe or well held can absolutely control your journey, and not in a good way. Psychedelic containers will be very different depending on the purpose. Is the intention of the journey for sacred recreating, or is it a therapeutic container? Or perhaps it's a medical research container. For the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to mostly refer to a group container that is created for the purpose of healing and personal growth. But many of these aspects also apply to individual sessions as well as sacred recreating with friends. So what goes into a well-designed psychedelic container? Number one, without question, is safety. Safety is non-negotiable. It's the foundation of any good psychedelic container. Without safety, it's by definition a bad container. Because participants are emotionally and energetically open when accessing altered states of consciousness, they're incredibly vulnerable to external influences. A solid container ensures physical, emotional, and energetic safety. That allows a participant to relax into the experience, to surrender with confidence that the external world is being well handled. Without that feeling of confidence or assurance, participants are likely to have an antenna up, meaning a part of them will be scanning for safety or for what's happening in the room, which means they aren't able to fully relax and surrender and do their really deep work. So what goes into safety? Safety starts with the person or people holding the space of the experience. If it's an individual or group therapeutic experience, it starts with ensuring that the facilitator is qualified. What's their experience? How many years have they been doing this? How did they get their training? What's their personal level of expertise with psychedelics? How many times have they ingested the medicine they're serving? In an ideal world, the facilitator has been trained in harm reduction, trauma-informed care, and integration practices. At the very least, they need to have experienced the medicine they're serving many times in many different containers. Safety is also involved with what kind of screening happens before the event. Was there any medical screening to identify potential contraindications with medications you might be taking? Did anyone ask if you have a history of heart disease, psychiatric issues, or other medical concerns? Was there clear communication of intentions, expectations, and boundaries before the journey? Were any emergency protocols discussed in case of medical or psychological crises? Again, I'm describing an ideal container, but the clearer the communication beforehand, the more relaxed you can be during the journey. More importantly, if you're not feeling good about any of these aspects, that's an important sign to slow down and potentially reconsider whether this is the right place for you. The next aspect to consider is who will be with you on the journey. This is more for group experiences. A well-curated group can create a deeper sense of community and connection. And of course, the opposite is true. You get to ask questions about who is coming, what the group size will be, how well the leader knows everyone. What are the group agreements around confidentiality, non-judgment, and respectful behavior? Is it important to you to have a gender balance? What is everyone's experience level? Will there be assistants or helpers? Are there agreements in place around interacting with your fellow participants? What are the agreements around touch and talking? Again, the more clear the agreements, the stronger and more trustworthy the container. There's another critical facet to consider, which is the container safe from unwanted sexual energy or abuse? Setting clear expectations for a group around this is one way of setting a safe container. It's also important for the leader and assistants to be vigilant and watching for any unwanted energies and to speak up when noticed. Sadly, women especially have to be vigilant in this regard, which will look differently for every woman and every container. It's important to be clear that a therapeutic psychedelic healing circle is not the place and time to hook up. When I was younger and single, I got vibed on all the time in medicine circles, and none of that energy was welcome. Instead of focusing on my own inner healing journey, I had to navigate unwanted energy and attention being thrown my way across the circle, and it was highly annoying and distracting. I learned to be very choosy as to where I sat in the circle, making sure that my friends were on either side or even across from me. Here's a pro tip. Don't hit on anyone when you're in a group psychedelic setting. There's plenty of time after to express your interest, but check first to see if it's even wanted and not just your fantasy projection. Expressing sexual energy towards someone while they're high and doing their own deep healing work can be deeply harmful or traumatizing, and it's not the right way to get something started. And group leaders need to be vigilant for this to keep their container safe for everyone. Another important factor that goes into building a well-held container is the emotional, spiritual, and psychological state of yourself and the other participants. Preparing your own inner emotional landscape is a big part of each person's responsibility for holding your own space within the container. Doing your own pre-work around your intention is critical to come to the space with the right mindset. While a group container is a wonderful way to process deep emotional work, if you're working on trauma or a recent devastating loss, you might want to consider an individual session first, where you can be fully held and tended to, allowing yourself to surrender more deeply into your healing journey. If it's available, it's always a good idea to do some pre-journey coaching or therapy to surface fears, resistance, to clarify your expectations and intentions for the work. Another critical aspect is that you trust the emotional mindset of the person or persons holding the container. Do they feel trusted and safe to you? Do they have a grounded presence that you can lean into for any needed emotional attunement? Do you feel safe surrendering control in their presence? Will they have your back, literally and figuratively?
Hey, fellow explorers. Thoughtful planning and preparation is the foundation of any successful psychedelic journey. And if something does go wrong, knowing how to navigate that difficult space is essential. That's why I wrote my psychedelic safety guide, including what to do when things go wrong. It's filled with tips and tools for keeping you and your friends as safe as possible. You'll find it at our website, psychedelicdivas.com. Please go get it, read it, and share it. The more we all know, the safer we can keep each other. Thanks.
Next, it's important to consider where the journey will be taking place, the physical setting of the container. A lot of this is going to be personal, so it's important to run this through your own sense of what feels right for you. Some people will feel more comfortable in a standard therapeutic setting, indoors, with walls, and no bugs. Others would prefer a more open air experience where they can feel connected to nature. Some would welcome a sacred setting with sacred objects and altars. Others would find that too woo and distracting. I've journeyed in a number of different settings, and things that have been okay for me would definitely not have worked for people I shared my story with. Burning Man is a perfect example. If you don't like crowds, chaos, blinky lights, and getting dirty, why would you think it's a good idea to go there and then add psychedelics on top of all that? Know yourself and trust your inner voice. If the vibe of the place feels off, it's not going to get better when you add on substances. Trust me. Don't let anyone talk you into an experience that's not suited to your heart, your psyche, your level of needed support and safety. Here are some things that can create a good setting. The space feels comfortable, clean, cozy, with access to nature if possible. The lighting is soothing, and the environment doesn't feel sterile or cold. There should be easy access to comfort items such as blankets, cushions, eye masks, water, tissues, snacks, and comforting food for later. The sound elements, whether it's music or silence, should be curated to help guide an overall positive emotional experience. You should have easy access to a bathroom, and if it's tricky to navigate getting there, there should be help available. Once you've entered the medicine space, you should not plan on leaving, and there should be agreements put in place in advance that no one will leave the property. If it doesn't feel like a safe space before you dose, please reconsider. It most likely will feel worse after you dose, and that's not going to provide a safe environment for you to do your healing work. It's okay to back out if it doesn't feel right. So how do you assess the physical setting? Ideally, you get to see the place you'll be doing the journey before you make your decision. But that's not always possible, especially if you're traveling for the experience. Before you sign up for that Instagram-worthy psychedelic retreat, you might want to talk to some people who've actually been there. Of course, the online photos of the retreat center will look amazing, but do they reflect reality? Here are some things to keep in mind when working in an international retreat environment. What's your comfort level with bugs? Uneven walking surfaces? Open air sleeping? Open pit toilets? Are you comfortable with camping-like accommodations, including shared bathrooms and bathing in streams? Do you like camping when you're sober? If not, you really might hate it when you're altered and in a foreign country, no matter how glam the photos look online. I'll share my own personal story about a trip to Peru that provided 3 very different settings. In 2000, I traveled to Peru with a group of people to do ayahuasca in the jungle for 2 weeks. I knew the group leaders very well and fully trusted them, which is why I said yes to this particular trip. In addition, I knew and liked the majority of the group. The place we would be working was quite the journey to get to, including a multi-hour boat ride down a river and then an hour hike into the deep jungle carrying all our stuff. I had talked with several people who had been to the place before and received some excellent advice on what to expect and what to pack. One piece of advice was to buy a small, lightweight, all-mesh tent to set up on my outdoor bed. This was an excellent piece of advice, as the thin curtains surrounding the bed would have been woefully inadequate at keeping the bugs at bay, especially at night. I was able to be happily ensconced in my little palapa with my headlight on, reading every night, while an amazing array of quite large bugs buzzed around the outside of my safely zipped enclosure. This particular setting turned out to be magical. I had privacy. There were very few bugs during the day. I had people I knew to turn to for companionship and integration help as needed. and a beautiful clean stream to wash in every day. It was a wonderful jungle camping experience, complete with my own private pit toilet with a seat. I felt fully comfortable in the setting, and as a result, I was able to do some really deep work while feeling safely contained. However, not all the little private palapa sleeping areas were quite as nice as mine. While mine was ideally located fairly close to the Maloka, or a location where we would be doing our journey work, so it was easy for me to crawl back home afterwards, some of the other palapas were much further away and required a lot more navigational expertise to come home to, especially at night. One that was occupied by a friend of mine was also occupied by a host of spiders who were very much a part of her day-to-day existence. Another person was unlucky enough to be assigned to a palapa that was on top of an ant colony, and he woke to a full-on invasion of his sleeping quarters in the middle of the night. When they moved him, it happened again, most likely as many of the ants moved with him and his belongings. I can tell you that my magical experience would have been significantly less magical if those had been my homes. I knew another friend who came back from the jungle at a different location with his entire backside aflame with bites acquired from having to spend an uncomfortable amount of time during one of his journeys on the shared outdoor pit toilet that was infested with mosquitoes. Even within a setting, there are micro settings that can make or break your experience. After 2 weeks, we left the jungle and returned to the town of Pucallpa, where we were offered an additional bonus journey opportunity. This would be on a small boat that would take us out on the lake where we would do another ayahuasca journey. I said yes to this one, and a handful of us showed up on the dock and boarded the tiny boat for our full moon adventure. The incredibly loud sound and noxious smells from the massive outboard engine were the first indication that this might not be a good idea. But I was committed at that point. Feeling somewhat nauseous with the smell of the engine's gas and the motion of the waves, I practiced some deep breathing techniques. Well, as deep as I could given the overwhelming engine odor. Eventually, we reached the center of the lake and the engine was turned off. The setting immediately improved, although we all had to be super careful because even the smallest motion set the boat rocking. And yes, that meant if you needed to go to the bathroom or throw up, the entire boat had to navigate those movements in tandem with you. This was a potential nightmare setting with no way out. Luckily, and magically, it turned out to be one of my favorite ayahuasca journeys of all time. The deep quiet of the lake, the huge full moon, the company of people I had just spent 2 weeks in the jungle with and trusted implicitly, allowed my nervous system to regulate and then drop into a deep sense of calm and ease. We worked out how to navigate the rocking boat. We sat in deep, meditative silence for hours. And then towards the end, our curandero, who had been singing to us throughout all the previous journeys, invited us to sing, and it turned out to be a beautiful offering. The setting, which had started out as potentially a huge mistake, instead became a beautiful, supportive background. Then came the third setting. We had returned to Lima, and once again, we were offered a bonus journey. A famous flute maker invited us to his home in the suburbs, where we could purchase our own flutes and then do a final ayahuasca journey, with him playing live for us. It sounded lovely, and we all piled into several vehicles for the hour drive to his home. When we got there, however, the setting was less than ideal. It turns out we would be journeying not in his beautiful garden, not in his home, but in his garage, sitting on the cement floor with various garage items, such as tools, as the only decoration. In addition, there were a number of local men who had also come for the journey, and the space was small and cramped. In traditional ayahuasca circles, it's important to not touch other participants because the energy fields are so open. It's easy to transmit your energy to another, and that's considered rude and an invasion of privacy. So here we were, sitting on a hard cement floor, shoulder to shoulder with each other, but not touching, and the room was half filled with strangers. I did not want to be there, but I didn't know how to get out. Then it turned out that not everyone was going to stay, and that one of the vans would be returning to the hotel. I wanted to leave, but heard the van was full. And then this was my mistake. I didn't ask the leaders for options. I didn't express that I too wanted to leave. I decided to be polite and to just go along. Well, it turns out that there was space in the van, and I could have left. But I decided to stay, even though I very clearly did not want to do ayahuasca in that setting. I didn't listen to that inner voice, and I decided to drink anyway. The medicine came on quite strongly, and the voice of grandmother, or ayahuasca, came into my consciousness loud and clear. She reared up, pointed a finger at me, and yelled, "Don't ever come into my space when you don't want to be here. And in the future, don't ever come unless I call you." And that was it. I did not receive another message the entire evening. I spent the next 6+ hours seeing only the most annoying, swirling visions of chaotic cartoon images, as if someone had taken the contents of a Walmart and put it in a blender. There was no content, no messages, nothing but swirling chaos while I sat on a hard floor, trying desperately not to touch the strangers on either side of me. Eventually, I got up and changed my setting by wandering out into the garden, where I was able to get some semblance of relief. At some point, the evening ended, and we drove back to Lima. I take 2 lessons from that evening to this day. The first is to listen to the little voice inside me. If it says I don't want to be here, I don't stay. And the second is, if I don't like the setting, I don't take the medicine. The final part of the container is the closing and the integration. A psychedelic container doesn't end when the substance wears off. The real alchemy often happens in the days and weeks afterward. A well-held container will provide opportunities for both a group and individual integration sessions to help ground and process the experience. Ideally, ongoing integration support is made available. And if it's not, I highly recommend finding a support person trained in integration for some follow-up sessions. Integration is where all the visions and new ways of thinking can be made real, but it takes work because the ego always wants to go back to the safety it knows, so it will almost always resist change. Working with an integration specialist can help you stay on the path of change and make the most of your healing journey. A psychedelic container is a sacred architecture, and it's an art to build a well-held one. When built with care, it becomes a vessel strong enough to hold the unknown, from the ecstatic to the traumatic to the deeply vulnerable. Whether you're a seeker or a facilitator, understanding the anatomy of a psychedelic container is essential for navigating these powerful inner landscapes with integrity and respect. Thanks so much for listening and for being on this learning journey together. If you found this valuable in any way, please share it with those you know. And if you wouldn't mind, right now, just take a second to give us a 5-star rating or a thumbs up wherever you're listening. It would truly make my day. If you want to be part of this ongoing journey with me, please consider going to psychedelicdivas.com and sharing your email address. Trust me, I hate email with a passion, so I promise not to spam you. But I will give you my psychedelic safety guide, including what to do when things go wrong, in exchange for that email. It's also the most reliable way to stay in touch with me, since social media sometimes pulls down psychedelic accounts at their whim. So thanks for considering joining my mailing list. Safe journeying, everyone.